Have you seen this picture of old-timers who supposedly shot down this pterosaur? How about this photograph from the Civil War? Did these soldiers really shoot down this flying pterosaur, a creature that we're told went extinct millions of years ago? As convincing as these may look, they're both fakes. So now we should just dismiss the whole possibility of pterosaurs and giant birds living recently. It's all just myth, right? Well, maybe not so fast. Did you know that the vast majority of Native American tribes share Thunderbird legends? And many of these accounts document natives being attacked by giant flying birds, especially women and children, as well as deer and massive fish? But here's the first challenge with these native Thunderbird legends. How in the world can giant birds swoop down and carry women, children, or deer when they weigh upwards of 100 pounds? We can answer this by first looking at 3 eagle species that are well known for carrying heavy prey: golden eagles, harpy eagles, and African crowned eagles. Did you know that some of these species, which can weigh up to 20 pounds, can carry prey up to 70% of their body weight? Video evidence captures these eagles lifting astonishingly heavy prey: foxes, monkeys, sloths, and even the chamois, a mountain goat antelope. So, were there really giant birds that lived in the past with humans that could be the creatures described in these Thunderbird attacks? Yes, there were. While evolutionists would place these birds before humans lived, the testimony from multiple tribes tells a different story. Some of the possible candidates include Pterosaurus woodburnensis, Aeolornis incredibilis, or Argentavis magnificens. These massive Ice Age birds had wingspans that ranged from 13 to 26 feet, and some weighed up to 170 pounds. They were certainly capable of carrying small humans and deer. With wingspans over 35 feet, pterosaurs could also carry heavy prey. For those of us who hold to a biblical timeline, these creatures are also possible Thunderbird candidates. The biblical perspective holds that pterosaurs lived with man before the flood, and some after when representatives were brought aboard the ark, and some continuing long enough after to be recorded in our dragon legends around the world. While this view is surprising to some, the instant creation of these magnificent flying creatures may be more credible than the evolutionary viewpoint.
Pterosaurs are flying reptiles that lived in the past. Some scientists believe that these flying reptiles evolved from a ground reptile, about the size of a large lizard. Fossilized remains of nearly 1,000 flying reptiles have been collected since Darwin's day. Many of these fossils show minute details of the wing membrane, the fur, and the teeth. But no transitional forms have been found showing a ground lizard slowly changing into a flying reptile. There are no fossils of a ground reptile with partially developed wings. All of the known pterosaur fossils are perfectly developed.
Yes, I must say we know only little about the evolution of pterosaurs. The ancestors are not known. When the pterosaurs first appear in the geological record, they were completely, they were perfect. They were perfect pterosaurs.
As for the ancestors, the possible ancestors of pterosaurs, there are only theories, hypotheses, of course. In fact, it is a mystery which group of reptiles prior to the Triassic might have given rise to the pterosaurs, actually. So we don't actually have the ancestor of the pterosaurs in the fossil record. It's still not known yet.
According to evolution opponents, this lack of ancestors for pterosaurs poses a problem for the theory of evolution. For them, it is difficult to argue that the transitional forms are missing due to a poor fossil record, when an astounding 1,000 flying reptiles have been recovered. Supporters of evolution continue to search for the ancestors of pterosaurs.
With no clear evidence of pre-pterosaurs to speak of, and their widespread burial throughout the entire Mesozoic fossil record, it makes more sense that the pterosaur fossils found in these layers today died in the flood, staying airborne as long as possible during the year-long flood, until succumbing to their watery fate. because 2 of every unclean kind were on the ark, including pterosaurs. Some varieties and other large birds lived long enough after the flood to be remembered in our histories as flying dragons and thunderbirds. Let's look at some native stories to see how they describe thunderbirds. But first, consider some of these early thunderbird drawings and petroglyphs. We have carved thunderbird prayer sticks, petroglyphs in many states, and some of them even have pterosaur-like features. Some are even shown attacking mammals or people. We have Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerican cultures, especially the Aztecs. The Inuit have a rich thunderbird history, with carvings and icons everywhere, including thunderbirds attacking large fish or even deer. One Inuit thunderbird account, documented by the Smithsonian in the 19th century, tells about the last pair of thunderbirds that lived on a mountaintop near Sobotniski, overlooking the Yukon River. The natives called it Tira-Matikpuk, meaning the great eagle, and claimed that these massive eagles preyed on large fish, deer, and even humans by looking down upon the village near the water's edge and swooping down on fishermen in their canoes and carrying them back to their young in the nest. The natives claimed that fishermen would be eaten by the young thunderbirds, and the canoe would lie bleaching among the bones and other refuse scattered around the perimeter of the nest. After this went on for years, only the most daring would go upon the great river in view of the birds. One summer day, a young hunter lost his wife to one of the birds that swooped down and carried her away to the nest. The hunter pursued, found the nest, and killed the young birds and then the 2 adults. The author testified that the natives regarded this story as more than just myth, but a real account that could be validated by inspecting the human bones and ribs of old canoes at the nest site. The natives of the area even have carvings of these thunderbirds swooping down on large fish and reindeer. Henry Schoolcraft documented a Dakota thunderbird account in the 1850s where natives killed a thunderbird in Little Crow's village on the Mississippi River. It was reported to have a face like a man, a nose like an eagle's bill, and a long, slender body. Its wings had 4 joints to each, which were colored in zigzags, representing what they believed to be lightning. The back of its head was red and rough, resembling a turkey. How could they know the anatomy of a pterosaur with such detail if they did not actually see one? In fact, a 4-jointed wing is exactly how a pterosaur wing would be described, along with the featherless face with large eyes, making it more similar to a human's face than the face of a feathered eagle. With joints, soft tissues like eyes, and colors intact, it seems like they were looking at a freshly killed pterosaur, not making up a story about a fossil. A similar Dakota account was recorded by Hanford Gordon in 1881, where a thunderbird was killed near Capsa by the son of Seton Wakawa Mani, and they named the place after the creature, calling it Wakinian Tanka, Big Thunder. An 1898 Apache Thunderbird legend records a giant raptor that devoured men, women, and children that was hunted and finally killed by a brave warrior. The historian claimed that the account could be verified by inspecting the actual wing of the monster bird that was of enormous size, with bones as large as a man's arm and fragments that were still preserved at Taos. 2 Yaqui elders from Sonora recount the following story of an enormous bird that preyed on humans during a time before their generation.
Long ago, men, women, and children were carried off by a giant bird of prey with huge talons that lived on the slopes of Otamcawi, called Skeleton Mountain, in the foothills of the Sierra Madre Occidental above the Rio Yaqui. In those days before pueblos, the Yaquis lived in crude shelters made of mud and branches, cowering in constant fear of the dreadful bird. Every evening, someone was carried off toward Skeleton Mountain. On the hillside, villagers found great heaps of bones and skulls of the victims. The bird was impossible to kill, for it had very keen eyesight and soared very high. A young orphan decided to hunt down the fiendish raptor. An old man who lived near Skeleton Mountain advised the boy to hide near the bone piles to ambush the bird. The boy set off with his bow and arrows. He dug a hole in the bone field and hid. then ambushed the creature and finally killed it with a club. They claimed that the bones of the terrible bird remained on the hillside to present day. After the boy returned to his village, he defended his account by promising, "You can cut my neck if the story is not true." The boy then led a party of elders and warriors from 8 villages to see the proof of the pit he had dug and the bird's skeleton. When the men and soldiers saw the bones of the big bird, they went away contented. The villagers rejoiced, no longer having to worry about danger from above.
This account was independently confirmed by a very similar story from Ruth Giddings in Yaqui Myths and Legends. This account includes the same basic elements. A great bird that hunted humans generated enough fear among the tribespeople that they did not have outside gatherings, and people living in shelters designed to protect against the great bird. She also reports the bird being killed by a young brave who lost his family to this bird. On February 12, 1699, Captain Juan Mateo Mangi and Jesuits Eusebio Francisco Quino and Adamo Gil recorded in their travel diary that the Puma Indians who lived around the Sonora Desert reported that a giant monster lived in a nearby cave until just recently. The natives reported that the monster would fly around and catch as many of their people that it could eat. Their diary records, "One day, after the creature had eaten its fill, some Indians followed it back to its cave. When it was sound asleep, they closed the entrance of the cave with wood collected for this occasion, then set it on fire. The creature couldn't escape, and growling fiercely, died as it was asphyxiated by the flames and smoke." The Pima also report a story where they killed a similar creature in the pueblo of Apasura using the same strategy. General Don Hernando Cortez reports sending these bones to Spain. About 900 BC, the famous Quetzalcoatl, or the feathered serpent icon, emerges in Mesoamerican cultures, especially with the Aztecs. It was often depicted as a large winged serpent with feathered plumage and avian features. It is typically described as a massive pterosaur-type flying reptile with a body that was serpentine and slender, with possible wings or crest-like features and a long whip-like tail. Seneca chief Cornplanter reported that a great flying creature they called the mosquito monster was killed, and many Cayugas and Onondagas came to view the terrible carcass. The body was larger than a bear's, and its wingspan was as long as 3 men. Its talons were as long as arrows, and the monstrous beak was lined with sharp teeth. In the 19th century, Chief Abraham Hill reported to historian W.M. Beauchamp that the tracks of this monster could be found south of Syracuse, where the Onondaga natives kept the tracks fresh and clear for display. He said the tracks were 20 inches long, bird-like, and could be traced for 20 rods, about 330 feet. What on earth could leave such tracks? Interestingly, both mosquito monster accounts agree that the feet or prints of this creature were in the 18 to 20 inch range, given that arrows are typically about 1/2 to 3/4 of bow length. Is it possible that the flying creatures in these accounts could have been large pelagornis birds or pterosaurs? While most pterosaur tracks are typically smaller, they are certainly within the range given in this report, especially taking into account that prints can be 30% larger when made in mud. The Smithsonian records the Cherokee legend about the Great Tlanua Thunderbird.
On the north bank of Little Tennessee River, in a bend below the mouth of Citico Creek, is a high cliff hanging over the water, and about halfway up the face of the rock is a cave with 2 openings. The rock protrudes above the cave so that the mouth cannot be seen from above. The Cherokee call it Tlanua, or the place of the Tlanua, the great mythic hawk. In the old time, away back soon after the creation, a pair of Tlanua had their nest in this cave. The streaks in the rock were made by the droppings from the nest. They were immense birds, larger than any that live now, and very strong and savage. They were forever flying up and down the river and used to come into the settlements and carry off dogs and even young children playing near the houses. No one could reach the nest to kill them, and when the people tried to shoot them, the arrows only glanced off and were seized and carried away in the talons of the Tlanua.
This Cherokee account is incredibly similar to many other accounts from Native American tribes. So similar, it seems obvious that they were experiencing the same type of creature. They were immense birds, larger than any alive today, and preyed on deer, dogs, and humans, typically smaller women and children. Think about that for a minute. If these accounts are just mythical, then why do they consistently describe these birds only attacking women, children, and mammals? Why do most of these accounts exclude men as prey for these massive birds? These accounts fit the actual carrying capacity of massive birds like Aeolornis incredibilis, Argentavis magnificens, and Pelagornis. And some of these accounts could be describing creatures even larger, like pterosaurs. Enter the account of the flying dragon, called the Piasa, from the Illinois natives of Illinois. The earliest account of the Piasa was recorded in 1673 by Jacques Marquette, a Jesuit missionary who founded Michigan's first European settlement and mapped the northern portion of the Mississippi River Valley. Before his team began their journey down the Mississippi in May of 1673, they were warned by the Menominee Indians that they would encounter horrible monsters which devoured men and canoes together. Sure enough, they soon discovered the massive portrait of the Piasa monster on a limestone wall, likely there as a warning to those traveling down the river. Later, in 1825, a rendition of this portrait was made and titled Flying Dragon. So, whatever this creature was, they regarded it as having dragon-like features. 11 years later, John Russell, a professor of Greek and Latin at Shurtleff College, recorded the Native American legend about the Piasa. Russell writes,
"The Piasa means the bird which devours men in the Illini language. Near the mouth of the stream is cut the figure of an enormous bird with its wings extended. Many thousand moons before the arrival of the palefaces, there existed a bird of such dimensions that he could easily carry off in his talons a full-grown deer. Having obtained a taste for human flesh, he would prey on nothing else. He would dart suddenly upon an Indian, bear him off into one of the caves of the bluff, and devour him. Such was the state of affairs when Chief Uatoga fasted in solitude for the space of a whole moon and prayed. On the last night, the Great Spirit appeared to him in a dream and directed him to select 20 of his bravest warriors. He concealed them to ambush the creature as he offered himself as bait, placing himself in open view. As he waited, he began to chant the death song. The Piasa arose and darted down on his victim. Scarcely had the horrid creature reached his prey before every bow was sprung and every arrow was sent quivering to the feather into his body. The Piasa uttered a fearful scream that sounded far over the opposite side of the river and then expired. Uatoga was unharmed. Not an arrow, not even the talons of the bird had touched him. The Master of Life, in admiration of Uatoga's deed, had held over him an invisible shield.
Next, there's the dwelling place of the Piasa, a place known as the Bone Cave in Grafton, Illinois. This may be one of the most confirming factors of the Piasa bird account. Russell and several others report accessing the cave where the Piasa bird lived and finding many human bones strewn about and mixed together with animal bones. Russell reports, "My curiosity was principally directed to the examination of a cave connected with the above tradition, as one of those to which the bird had carried his human victims. The floor of the cavern throughout its whole extent was one mass of human bones. Skulls, animal bones, and arrowheads were mingled in the utmost confusion. To what depth they extended, I was unable to decide, but we dug to a depth of 3 or 4 feet in every part of the cavern, and still we found only bones. Think about this for a minute. What could explain a random assemblage of mixed animal and human bones better than a cave occupied by a massive flying predator like a pterosaur? A corroborating report is provided by William McAdams, a geologist and curator of the State Museum at Springfield. In his 1887 book titled Records of the Ancient Races in the Mississippi Valley, McAdams notes that the cave contained many bones, some of them human. Something's going on here. First, the Jesuit explorers are warned by natives about a man-eating dragon that lives up the river. Then, they find a mosaic of the creature on a cliff face, followed by an 1825 drawing of the flying dragon portrait the early explorers likely viewed. Then, there's Russell's detailed account of the native chief, followed by independent testimonies of the creature's lair being filled with human and animal bones all mixed together. While some may dismiss this multiple century account as myth, it sure seems like a pterosaur fits this story well. There's just no way that all these reports from independent tribes and explorers from around the world are dreaming up these creatures with their imaginations, especially when they seem to be describing the same types of creatures, oftentimes with quite believable elements in their accounts, such as Thunderbirds focusing more on lighter women and children as prey, and 2 accounts that noted people even avoiding where these animals defecate because they had consumed humans. We also have footprints of recorded lengths and physical descriptions that could match no other creatures besides giant Ice Age birds or pterosaurs. Our worldviews guide our perception of the past. The data suggests no clear evolutionary ancestors leading up to these magnificent creatures. Their body plans are perfectly designed for flight, even more so in the world before the flood, which is yet another confirmation of the Bible's 2 world epochs. We have too many accounts about these creatures with too many plausible details that are consistent across these stories. It's no wonder the Native Americans highly regarded the Thunderbird and gave it such spiritual significance.